Alright guys, so do you really like Grand Seiko watches, in particular the ones with the textured dials, but you're just not willing to pay that kind of money, or you just don't have it? If that's the case, then perhaps this is the watch for you, as it has a similar look, but it costs a fraction of the price. So this is the review of the Addiesdive AD2075, and it's available in 3 different colours. The one I've got here is green, but they also do it in black and white as well. So I've reviewed quite a few watches from Addiesdive now, some of which I've got down here. So if you want to check out the playlist, I'll leave a link to that up in the top and also down in the description as well, because they offer some of the best specs at the best price on AliExpress. So I guess the question is, have they done it again with this piece? So it comes in the usual kind of Addiesdive packaging, and then here's the watch. So you can see we've got a really nice textured dial on this. I think it does look really good, and as I said, if you're not keen on this green, they do it in white and black as well. So there's some nice details on this one, starting with that dial. It's got a really nice kind of bark wood effect, and you can see it's playing with the light quite nicely as well with the indices. But before we go into any more detail on that, first of all let's go over the dimensions, because they do actually differ from the ones listed. So starting with the diameter, I'm getting it at 38.5, but it says on the listing it's 38. When it comes to the thickness, I'm getting it at 12.8, but for some reason the listing says it's 13.5. Then we've got a lug width of 20, and then the all-important lug to lug is coming in at about 48mm. So those 2 bits are pretty much spot on. When it comes to the weight on the supply bracelet, with all the links included, it's coming at 148 grams, and then size for my 7-inch wrist, it's coming at 137. So now let's take a closer look at that, starting with the clasp. So I've mentioned this before in previous videos, that I'm not keen on them using this logo on the watches that aren't actually dive watches. I'd like to see them come up with something different, or just have the text on there. But we've got plenty of micro adjust on there, so that's good. And then a nice polished chamfered edge. So got double pushers, milled clasp. Then when it comes to the case back, we've got the same kind of issue with that, because again we've got the dive style case back. So again, I'd like to see them come up with something different for the watches that aren't dive watches. Let me know down in the comments if that is an issue for you. And then we have the usual specs around the outside, so the fact that it's stainless steel, 100m water resistance, automatic movement, and then we do have a screw down case back as well. Now moving on to the bracelet. It's a fairly standard one that they use on quite a lot of different watches. So the top is fully brushed, and then the sides are polished, and we've got push pins on there. Would have been nice if they used something kind of matching the more Grand Seiko style. Moving on to the head of the watch, you can see the sides are fully polished, so they will gather fingerprints and small scratches. Then we've got that signed crown, again with that logo, which again don't think it suits this kind of style watch. It is also a fairly small crown too, so that might be a bit of an issue when it comes to winding it, but I'll go over that when we talk about the movement. When it comes to the top of the lugs, you can see they're brushed, so that matches up quite nicely with the bracelet, and then when it comes to the bezel, that is also polished as well. But now let's get on to the best part of this watch, and that is the dial. So as I said, we've got that kind of textured wood grain effect, which does look really good, especially under macro. It's not always that obvious, depending on the lighting conditions, but when it does catch it a certain way, you definitely see it, and a lot of the detail in it as well. And another really nice detail with this is the indices. They are really nicely done, nicely faceted, and we've also got some room in there for Lume as well. So we'll be checking the Lume in a bit, and then we've got the frame around the date window at the 3 o'clock, which does help tie it all together. Again, personally I prefer it down at the 6, but other than that, it's well done. And because we've got the white in the rest of those indices, I just think it helps tie it in with the white date wheel. We've got nice proportions on all of the hands as well, and we've even got the cap on that second hand, so again, just a nice little attention to detail. And the hands are really nicely faceted as well, so they catch the light nicely too. I'm glad that they haven't put the logo on the dial. It is just the Addiesdive text in that stylised font. Again, I'd personally like to see that on the clasp as well. But now let's check whether we've got sapphire crystal on this or not, using the trusty diamond selector too. And yep, we have got sapphire, so always good to see. So now let's get on to the movement. And before we do that, as I said, we're going to talk about this crown a bit, because I do have a little bit of an issue with this. It is slightly too small for my fingers, ideally. I'd like to see it slightly bigger. Don't get me wrong, I can still unscrew it, but it just is a touch on the small side for my liking though. It is nice and grippy though, so that does help. And we've got the NH35 movement, so if we unscrew it, and then pop it out to the first position, then we can change the date. Pop it out to the second position, second hand stops, we got a hack in, and obviously just change the time. Pop it back in, second hand re-engages. Hand winding, all works well, as you've come to expect with the NH35 movements. So obviously with this style of watch, we have a fixed bezel, so we're not going to be talking about the bezel action or anything. So we're just going to get straight onto the Lume and see if they've managed to get a decent amount in there. Because this style of watch, you don't really expect too much, but we'll see. So we've got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So surprisingly enough, it is actually pretty impressive, at least initially. So we've actually got BGW9 on this, and it looks like they've got a really good amount on there. They've definitely got quite a few layers, doesn't specify how many. It's consistent across the hands and the indices. We don't have any on the second hand, but other than that, it's looking pretty good. But the question as always is, what is the longevity like? So let's speed this up now and find out. So not a great deal of change to begin with. Still looking pretty consistent as well. Not got anything fading before anything else. And as we keep going on, that stays the case. So the hands and the indices are both equally as bright, so that is good. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised, because given this is a more dressier style of watch, albeit more of a sports dressy kind of Garda type thing, but the Lume is pretty impressive. Obviously it won't be competing with a diver, but for what it is, it's definitely a good level. So all that's left to do now is show you what it's like on wrist, go over the pros and cons, and then you can make up your mind whether you want to pick one of these up or not. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. So I think it does look pretty good, and you can probably see now what I'm on about with that dial. Sometimes it just looks like it's a plain solid green dial, whereas other times when the light catches it, you definitely see that texture more. And again, I just love the way the light plays with those indices in the hands. It's definitely a smart looking piece, I think. In terms of how it wears, because we've got that plenty of micro adjust on the clasp, you can get the perfect fit. But again, I would have liked to have seen just the Addiesdive script font on there, similar to on the dial, or perhaps just something totally different, a different logo or something. When it comes to the bracelet, it does the job and it looks fairly good, but again, it would have been nice if they used something more similar to the watch they're homaging. It's just lacking a little bit of detail maybe, just breaking it up with some little polished chamfers or something. And when it comes to the head of the watch, that wears nicely as well, gives a nice compact lug to lug, bit of curvature to those lugs as well, and those female end links. So when it comes to the issues with this, I think the main one is probably going to be the branding. It's just not cohesive enough for this kind of style of watch, I don't think. There's too many nods and stuff to the dive watches they make, and I just don't think it suits being on this type of watch. Thankfully they're not all that noticeable, and the one that's on the dial is just the text in that stylized font. The crown is thankfully small enough that you're not going to be able to see it really unless you're really looking for it. The only other one is really that one on the clasp, which again, they could easily fix. And speaking of that crown, that's probably the main thing I would change personally, after the branding. Just make that crown ever so slightly bigger, just so it's a bit easier to use if you've got slightly larger hands. Another minor one, which is just a personal preference thing, is that date window I'd like to see down at the 6, but again, I think it works well enough where it is at the 3. So, to answer the question I posed at the beginning of this video, is this another good value piece from Addiesdive? Granted, yeah, it is a bit more expensive than some other watches, but I think they've added some extra details, which do help to justify that. Things like the cap on the second hand, the really nice faceted hands and indices, that lovely textured dial. So I guess it comes down to whether you think the pros outweigh the cons with this one. I personally think they do. I think it's a really smart looking watch, with just a couple of little niggles, as opposed to deal breakers. But again, do you agree? If you do, don't forget to use the link down in the description to pick one up. That is an affiliate link, does help support the channel, but you don't pay any extra. And that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.